Hola Comadres, welcome to another episode of Comadreando podcast. I'm your host Marcy, and today we have yet another solo episode. Life update. There's a couple of things going on. So, why is my episode late? Well, what happened was I started the new job. I started on the 31st, and I've been in orientation since then. This school is very thorough. They're making sure that they're setting us up for success, and I feel that all the training is for your best interest. So we started on the 31st, almost a month before the kids start, and we've been in different professional development sessions regarding the literacy curriculum, more professional development sessions regarding the math curriculum, routines for every day, all kinds of things, just to ensure that we as educators are ready and are going to meet the expectations that they have of us as teachers. Okay, I'm going to tell you something right now. I've been teaching for 9 years. Never in my life have I ever been subject to something like that. Not even when I started with the Department of Education. Okay? And that's saying a lot. Okay? When I started there, it was one day that I went in person. It wasn't even for a training. It was to hand in my documents with a whole bunch of other people that were hired. And all we did was hand in the documents, go in. When we were done, that was like half of a day. Then we went home and we started in the school. Okay? The professional development we received in the school was one day, not even a full day, okay? And it wasn't even about whatever. It was just random. So it's like, I'm just like, they're there to set up teachers to fail. And the thing with this training is that it's for people that they might have years of teaching experience, but they know that they're not used to the systems that are in place in that school particularly. So they're going to make sure that they're setting you up so that you are as successful as you can be. Wow. Like, I'm laughing, but it really pisses me off because it's like these administrators at the school level, like they just keep giving the same dumb curriculum, right? Or they're coming into your classroom to evaluate you. However, they haven't trained you properly. So how is it that you're going to evaluate me on something you haven't trained me on? That doesn't make any sense to me. But it's going really well. There's been a lot of team building activities. Like, I honestly feel like this genuine... Sorry, I'm adjusting my chair, y'all. I'm going to be honest. I feel this genuine sense of belonging and level of professionalism that I didn't feel in the Department of Education. And I'm going to keep it 100 with you guys. There are teachers in the Department of Education, and you know some of those teachers that should not be teaching. They shouldn't be teaching. They shouldn't, have a license. And the only reason why they're there is because of the union. And y'all could fight me on this, and we could talk about it. If y'all want to talk about it, I don't care. But it's the truth, right? There's people that are teaching that should not be teaching, that should never have been teaching, but that they know how to fake the funk, or they're somebody's favorite and they're in the building because of that. And then once a teacher gets tenure, it's very difficult to get them eliminated. I know teachers that were awful and the principals have gone after them, and because they've gotten really good lawyers, they are still in the job and they're still teaching children, and that's the way it works, unfortunately. So y'all know my opinions. These are not new. You know how I feel about certain systems, and this is one of those systems that is broken. Yeah. Anyway, but I feel ready to teach my kids. We still have 2 more weeks of training. 2 more weeks of training. Next week we are at like headquarters, and then the final week before the kids come, we are in the new building because we're opening up a brand new building. So We're founders of this school, and we're opening up a new building, a new site, everything, like in a new neighborhood. So that's pretty exciting, actually. And my co-teacher's dope. She's like, she has, I feel like, just as much time teaching as I do, and she's pretty experienced, and I feel like we're on the same wavelength with respect to how children learn and things that we want to see in our classroom and things we don't want to see, and the level of respect that we're gonna have for the children and each other, obviously. So far so good. Crossing my fingers. But yeah, it's going really well. What else has happened? Oh yeah, my grandmother. I don't know. I don't think I've ever talked about it on the show. Okay, so my grandma is diabetic. She was having issues with circulation, and it got really bad during the pandemic, especially because we couldn't take her anywhere. At the height of the pandemic, she was having a lot of issues with circulation, and we weren't able to take her anywhere. So she ended up having to have like an emergency intervention on her foot. So they put in a stent to unclog the arteries in her legs. Unfortunately, those went back. The stent didn't work. It went back to the same clot that she had before, and like a year or so later, not a year or so, a year or so later, after the pandemic, she ended up having to have a amputation of her right leg, lower leg. So after the amputation, she's been in a rehabilitation center learning how to be independent again and maneuver with a prosthetic leg, and in the wheelchair before they gave her the prosthetic leg. So they just let her out the weekend before last. So we were celebrating her. It's good to see her in very good spirits, because that's something that's very like life changing, and she just has this amazing outlook on life that she's just so positive. And I'm sure she has her moments that she's, sad, but for the most part, she's glad to be alive. You should have seen her. She was dancing in her in the chair on the barbecue, because we decided to have a barbecue for her in the backyard. Aiden's job is going really well. He's been getting paid from work, which is pretty cool. So he's still every day reminding me that he wants to go to DR, and unfortunately, because I'm starting the new job, we're not going to be able to go this summer. So I feel bad, but I let him know that, and that he's going to camp in a week. So hopefully he won't be too upset about that. But yeah, it's been interesting. So the topic for today, going back to the topic for today, we're going to be talking about anxiety and depression among parents of kids with special needs. And the reason why it came up is that one of the comadres reached out to me and let me know that she was recently diagnosed with ADHD. Not ADHD, anxiety disorder. And we were discussing, and I related to her. I'm like, I suffer from the same thing. It's not new, and that kind of led me to the path of investigating how many of us are there that suffer from anxiety and depression. And I found some articles that can be helpful. At the end of this, we're going to talk about instances where I realized when I first realized that I was anxious, I didn't have the vocabulary for it. And then we're also going to talk about what you can do if you feel yourself having an anxiety attack, and then adaptive coping mechanisms that will help you in the long run. So let's get to vamos al grano. Let's get to the topic at hand, right? So we have talked about the incidence of mental health issues of parents and caregivers of kids with special needs. And in the research that we have gone over on the show before, we found that those parents are 2 times as likely to suffer from mental health issues due to the difficulty in their situation than other parents of kids with special needs. So today we're going to take a more focused lens on focusing just on anxiety and depression specifically. So I was trying to actually find stats, and there's not like one overarching stat. I feel like, all right. So some of the information that I found says, in one. Okay, I'm gonna read you the name of the article. It's called "Depression and Anxiety in Parents of Children with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities: A Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis." So this is a study of various studies. So they were searching databases for English language articles published between January 2004 and July 2018. All the studies that were eligible were going to be examining the level of depression or anxiety and compared to between parents of children with and without intellectual and developmental disabilities. There was no limit placed on geographic location. The portion of positive associations between parenting a child with IDD, that's what they summarize it as, and depression and anxiety were disaggregated by disability type, geographic region, and sample size. The percentage of parents at risk of moderate depression or anxiety were calculated using recognized clinical cutoff scores for each screening tool. Meta-analyses in which pooled effect sizes of elevated depression and anxiety symptoms were calculated were conducted across 2 IDD conditions: autism and cerebral palsy. So, of the 5,839 unique records screened, 19 studies fulfilled the inclusion criteria. So from those 19 studies, those studies were conducted on high income or upper middle income countries. 69% focused on parents with cerebral palsy or autism. Nearly all studies found a positive association between parenting a child with IDD and depression and anxiety symptoms. The factors associated with higher levels of depression symptoms amongst parents of children with IDD included the severity of the disability. So the more disabled the child was, the greater the incidence of anxiety and depression. The lower household income as well paired with the anxiety and depression. So the studies show that approximately 1/3, 31% of parents with children with IDD reached the clinical cutoff score for moderate depression, compared with 7% of parents of children without IDD. 31% of parents of children with IDD reached the cutoff score for moderate anxiety, compared with 14%. So in both categories, depression and anxiety, parents of kids with special needs are about 31% likely to have it. It says the meta-analyses demonstrated moderate effect sizes for elevated depression amongst parents of children with autism and cerebral palsy. It says the conclusion is that results indicate elevated levels of depressive symptoms among parents of children with IDD. Quality concerns amongst the existing literature support the need for further research, especially in low and middle income countries, which is true. So before we continue, right, so those are pretty alarming statistics. 31%. That means that 3 in 10 parents of kids with developmental disabilities suffer from anxiety and depression. Okay, but before we get into that, like why that's significant and how that affects us as parents, we're going to look at what is anxiety. So I looked at the DSM-5 and it said that anxiety, hold on, I'm going to read it to you guys verbatim because I don't want to paraphrase. So we looked for the classification of generalized anxiety disorder, right? It says excessive anxiety and worry, apprehensive expectation, occurring more days than not for at least 6 months, about a number of events or activities such as work or school performance. Another thing that qualifies is that the person finds it difficult to control the worry. It says the anxiety and worry are associated with 3 or more of the following 6 symptoms, with at least some symptoms present for more days than not for the past 6 months. So one thing is restlessness or feeling keyed up or on edge, being easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating or mind going blank, irritability, muscle tension, and sleep disturbances. So out of all of those, I can tell you right now, I suffer from, all of those. So when my anxiety is really high, I have issues with sleep. The muscle tension is bad because usually I feel it like here in the back of my neck. Irritability, I get annoyed easily. Difficulty concentrating, like I'm thinking about all these other things at the same time and I'm not focused on what was going on in front of me. Easily fatigued. So because I'm constantly worrying, I'm laying down in bed for prolonged amounts of time without wanting to get up. And then the restlessness, right? You're exhausted, but you still feel like you gotta moving around and you have to be doing something. It says the anxiety, worry, or physical symptom cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other areas of functioning. Sometimes anxiety can be so bad for some people that they cannot leave their house. So thank you, DSM-5, for that. Another definition that I found was that it says anxiety may be defined as apprehension, tension, or uneasiness that stems from the anticipation of danger, which may be internal or external. Right? And although some definitions distinguish between fear as being an emotional reaction to a real and consciously recognized threat, and anxiety as being a fear response when reality does not justify such a response. So there's a difference between fear and anxiety, right? It's a fear response when it doesn't justify it. So your body feels like you're afraid, but I beg to differ on that, and I'm going to let you know why. And it says since 2 to 4% of the general population has been estimated to experience sufficient symptoms of anxiety to be classified as having anxiety disorder, it is extremely important to be careful inquiry for the presence of anxiety be made. So from my experience, what does it look like, right? Apprehensiveness or worriedness, tremors, shaking can be involuntary or voluntary. Increased sweating, so like having a nervous sweat, rapid breathing or shortness of breath that you can't quite explain. When I have anxiety attacks, it can come on and I can feel like I'm having palpitations in the moment, which is pretty scary. So the thing is with those symptoms is that you can't quite control them. And when they come on, it's hard to get yourself back. So there's different things that we can do to help us cope with the anxiety in the moment, especially when we're having an anxiety attack. So what does it feel like in your body? It can feel like heat rushing up from your feet and washing over you, or you can feel really cold in your extremities. It's a constant feeling of dropping in the pit of your stomach, right? It can feel like constant preoccupation with things that are out of your control, right? Worrying about, I don't even know, like right now I'm not anxious, so I can't even think about what it is. Worrying about something that you can't control, right? Constant worry or distress. In case of an anxiety or panic attack, it can feel like a knot in your throat that just won't move and is obstructing your breath. You feel like you can't take a full deep breath, which makes me panic more. So we read the relationship between anxiety and parents who are caregivers. There's other factors that are in there, but if you suffer from anxiety and depression and you're a caregiver, you are not alone. There's many of us that are suffering through the same things. Yeah, I feel like I have suffered from anxiety from a young age. I just didn't have the language around it before. So the youngest that I feel that I had an anxiety, not an anxiety attack, because those didn't start till I was older. But I remember feeling anxious, very anxious, to the point that I couldn't calm myself down. I mean, performance-wise in school, there was a lot of pressure put on me as a kid to be excellent, and when I felt like there was a test coming or something like that, I would always be hyper anxious about that. The earliest moment of anxiety that I remember is was it second grade? I was going to second grade, and I had done and redone my backpack multiple times to arrange it to have like the perfect amount of crayons and markers and all these other things that I needed. And I was so anxious that I even slept in the clothes that I was going to wear the next day. What other things used to give me anxiety? Fitting in school, being made fun of or getting in trouble in school. But it wasn't like a little worry. It was like something that I would actually lose sleep over. I wouldn't be able to sleep, and then the next day I would wake up. Like the little bit of sleep that I did get, when I had to go to school the next day, I'd be exhausted because I was up all night worrying about stuff that had nothing, that were out of my control. There was nothing that I can do about whether kids were gonna like me. There was nothing I can do about scoring well on the test. Obviously, like if I studied, yeah, like I was a great student, but for some reason there was this overwhelming feeling of not performing, and then like getting in trouble, and then I would spiral, right? I would just like start thinking about every other like scenario or situation of things that could happen. Yeah, the first time I had an anxiety attack was I was married with Aiden's dad, and we had an argument about something. I want to say it was about finances or money. But yeah, I know it was early in the morning and I was on my way to work. We were walking to get the car out of the garage, and we got into a huge argument, and then I started having an anxiety or panic attack. So the onset of that was I felt the heat come through my body. I started cold sweating. I started crying. I couldn't stop myself. And then all of a sudden, I got this huge knot in my throat that wouldn't let me breathe, and I kept getting palpitations. I felt like I was having a heart attack. So I kept hyperventilating because I was freaking out because I thought I was gonna die, and I didn't know what was going on. And I kept trying to take a deep breath to help, quote unquote, calm myself down, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do, is like take a deep breath if you're feeling anxious, right? But because the onset of the panic attack was happening at that moment, nothing was helping me. Nothing. So eventually I was able to get to my car and sit down and just like try to calm myself down as much as I could. And I was able to snap out of it. His dad went his separate way and just left me there. And I was able to get back to myself. But it's a scary feeling, man. Because you don't know, especially if it's the first time that it's happening to you, you don't know what's going to happen. Especially like, and then your mind, because your mind is your worst enemy, right? Your mind starts thinking like, okay, you're going to die here. What's going to happen to your kid? Like stuff like that starts happening, right? Speaking about what's going to happen to your kid, I feel like that's a reason why us parents of or caregivers of kids with special needs have high anxiety. You know, we think about things like that, like what will happen to our kids if we were not around anymore. And a lot of the times that occupies most of our thoughts. You know, it's something we try to keep out of our head, but when it gets there, it's hard to like eliminate. So I feel like that's one of the main reasons we worry. We also worry about what's the quality of life that our children are going to have in the future. What else do we worry about? I mean, y'all know. Y'all know the stuff. It's just basically all the stuff that other parents worry, but ours is a little bit more because our kids need us so much, and we don't know. If we don't have the right support system, it's hard to think about how that will work. So that gives you anxiety because you don't know what that future is going to look like. All right. So I found another article. Okay. So the other article is called Parenting and Future Anxiety, the Impact of Having a Child with developmental disabilities. So the abstract of the study is the following. It says it examined differences in future anxiety among mothers and fathers of children with and without developmental disabilities. And it also analyzed differences in future anxiety within the group of parents of children with developmental disabilities, taking into consideration parent-related factors and child-related factors. A group of 167 parents of kids with developmental disabilities were compared to a group of 103 parents of children with typical development. The group with DD, developmental disabilities, included children with ASD, sensory disorders, and intellectual disabilities. Parents completed the Future Anxiety Scale, FAS1. Mothers of kids with DD had a higher general level of FA than fathers of kids without DD. Mothers of children with DD reported higher anxiety about their future health and the meaning of their future life than fathers of children with developmental disabilities, which is true. So one of my compadres, shout out to Ishmael, we were discussing the other day the prevalence of so many single mothers that are mothers to kids with developmental disabilities. And I feel like that's something that should be studied. It's a lot of these dads, not all, a lot of these dads, it's so easy for them to kind of wash their hands like Pontius Pilate and just like leave and start a new life and just worry about themselves, or even if they don't start a new life with another person, just kind of desentenderse, like not act like it has nothing to do with them. Okay, so for parents of children with developmental disabilities, those with lower education, male children, and older children reported higher future anxiety. The group at risk of highest general future anxiety are mothers of children with developmental disabilities, especially those without a professional career. Similarly, parents of teenagers or sons with developmental disabilities are at increased risk of FA. And I can see how that plays out because you worry about your sons, especially if they have a developmental disability and what their future is going to be like, especially the older they get, right? Because you don't know what their quality of life is going to be like I said before. Yeah, so the study went on to like give more things. I'll link this in the show notes. Yeah, so I started taking medication for anxiety and depression consistently. I want to say like 2 years ago. I feel like it has made quite a difference. I was first taking something else and at a different level, and I feel like that wasn't helpful. But once I switched to this new medication, which is Zoloft, I'm gonna be transparent, and they're not sponsoring me, so pay me Zoloft. But yeah, the Zoloft is working. It takes about 2 weeks to really kick in and saturate in your body. So if you are put on medication, just give it time for it to start working. I do feel like there's some side effects, but everybody's different. But like definitely do feel calmer and don't get as anxious anymore, even though I do have some anxiety, but it's not to the extent that it was before. I kind of feel bad sometimes when I'm taking medication because I come from a Black and brown community and my family is from the campo and they're like, oh no, don't take medication, whatever. Sometimes I feel bad about taking it, but I know that it works for me. It doesn't necessarily work for everyone. So these are other ways to manage your stress and anxiety. It says get more physical activity, aerobic exercise, move your body, walk or bike, eat a balanced diet, right? Reduce alcohol and caffeine. It says minimize phone and screen time. It says practice self-care. So going for a walk outside, taking a bath, lighting candles, reading a good book, preparing a healthy meal, stretching before bed, getting a massage, practicing a hobby, doing something creative, using a diffuser with calming scents, practicing yoga, So some scents that help induce calm and help you calm down are lavender, rose, vetiver, bergamot, Roman chamomile, neroli oil, frankincense, sandalwood, ylang ylang, orange or orange blossom, and geranium. So that's all part of aromatherapy as well. Another way to reduce anxiety and induce calm is journaling. So when you're having an anxiety attack, sometimes it's helpful, or before you have an anxiety attack, when you're feeling anxious, start writing things down. Spending time with your friends and family can, reduce depressive symptoms and anxiety, right? Create boundaries and learn to say no. This was a big one for me. Yeah, I used to say yes to everything, and then I would feel overwhelmed, and that would lead me to get more anxious and more depressed. Another thing is avoiding procrastination. I was a major procrastinator. There was this thing that I would wait till the last minute for everything, and then I would have these monster anxiety attacks about that. Practicing mindfulness, right? Being in present in the moment and focusing on what's going on in front of you without worrying about what's going to happen later or what happened before. Okay? Cuddling helps relieve anxiety and stress. Spending time in nature. So going for a walk in the forest. If you don't have a forest, go for a walk in the park. If you don't have a park, go to a garden. Being outside, obviously not in traffic, will help in reduce your anxiety. Deep breathing, like I said before. Spend time with a pet. Like having a dog has helped me with my anxiety a lot. There's certain supplements that you can take. So you can take magnesium, it helps a lot. Rhodiola, ashwagandha, vitamin B, L-theanine can help reduce stress. There's moving meditations, right? You can do I feel like yin yoga is very helpful for that. Actually, any kind of breath work that you pair with movement is helpful. Exercise is helpful as well to quell the anxiety. Talking to your therapist, talking to a friend. What else can you do when you're feeling anxious? Some people tend to eat, which is not helpful because then you're dealing with other things afterwards. But so I feel like that would be a maladaptive coping mechanism. Yeah, breathwork and meditation have helped a lot, right? And the thing is, the daily practice of it will help you hedge against getting the anxiety attacks in the first place. Because the thing is, like, when you're having an anxiety attack, if somebody's telling you to calm down, that's the last thing you're going to do. You're going to get more anxious because you can't calm yourself down. It's not something that you can control. It's out of your loci of control, right? It's not something you can control in the moment. So definitely being aware of triggers and avoiding them, or knowing that and like preparing for those situations ahead of time. What other things used to get me anxious? Oh, going out with my kid used to get me anxious, especially before like he was able to deal with like all these situations that he's able to deal with now. It used to just worry me so much about what his reaction was going to be and whether it was going to be a good day or a bad day. And I know that's something that a lot of us deal with as parents. Yeah. But there is help here in New York City. There's crisis emergency services. You can dial 988, and that's a hotline to help you deal with whatever mental health or crisis you're having at that moment. They speak all the languages that we have here present in New York City. National hotline for mental health. So the national hotline for mental health is 1-800-662-HELP. And that's 4357. So yeah. So we know that we are at higher risk of dealing with these issues, and if you are dealing with it, you are not alone. definitely is something to bring up with your therapist, and it does not make you a weak person to bring it up, because this is something that we deal with as humans, and it's actually brave to look for help when you need it instead of just trying to pretend like everything's okay, you know? Um, the faster we'll deal with these things, the more likely we are to find a solution to it, and that we are going to be around for our kids in the future, right? Try to engage in adaptive versus maladaptive coping mechanisms, you know. Um, some maladaptive things are, drinking or taking drugs or eating your feelings. It's better to talk about the things instead of not. So yeah, definitely I'm gonna link my I have a playlist of meditations on the YouTube channel. I'm gonna link that in the show notes as well. I'm gonna try to record a breathing meditation that will help a lot. I actually have a sadhana up there, which is the sadhana for inner anger. I feel like I used to get angry a lot, especially at Aiden's other parent, because I felt it was so easy for him to disassociate and kind of just go his own way and not worry about his child's future, that it used to make me very, very angry. So I've done a lot of work around anger. And I wanted to offer it to y'all because I feel like that is something that we can help ourselves in the community. If you decide to participate in the sadhana, let me know. It's donation based, so whatever you can afford, send it on over. But the breathing, the meditation, the breathing exercises, that's you don't have to pay me for that. That's just something you can look up. I can actually link probably a couple in here. Yeah, but that those are the ways that I have dealt with anxiety, is taking medication, also talking to people. Try to talk to people that are not going to dismiss what you're dealing with, because I did try to talk to his dad about when I was having panic attacks or anxiety attacks about these things, and his solution was to tell me to give up Aiden to him with his papers, or like send them over with his birth certificate and just give him up, that he'll take care of him, which is not what you want to hear when you're having a panic attack about, or an anxiety attack, or you're having like high anxiety levels. That's not a solution. That's like diminishing the problem, and it makes you feel like you're not a good parent. So yeah, don't talk to people that are gonna offer those kind of solutions. The better solution would be, talking to someone that would help you look at different ways to deal with the problem and look at it from a different perspective. Another thing that I adapted was, when I would start spiraling, I would just ask myself, like, who said that? And usually it's me, right? Because we know our brains are our biggest enemy sometimes. So stopping that train of thought is easier than not. And of course, we're in the heights. It's still summer. People are still bugging out, and that's what you heard in the background was music passing by. But yeah, try to have some kind of support system. If you don't have one and your child has a social worker from OPWDD or whatever, the school, you can talk to them and they can try to find you resources to help you out. It's important to talk to somebody rather than not, because the not talking is where we run the risk of getting ourselves in danger. So, yeah, talk about it. Talk to somebody. We're here to help. As always, I'm always here for you. Make sure you reach out, even if it's just a vent. like to share. Another comadre also got diagnosed with ADHD, but she didn't know that she had, and she's been dealing with that. But it's something that as Black and brown people we don't really recognize too much. So it's better to deal with it in the moment than let it accumulate and then have an outburst or something and then you deal with it. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for today, comadres. If you want more, or if you want more information about this stuff, let me know. Send me a slide up into my DMs or send me a Comadre-Gram. Remember to follow me on Instagram and all the social media platforms. Don't forget to rate, like, and subscribe to the podcast channel. And also leave me a review. Leave me a review, guys. On Apple, you can leave 5 stars and then write, your review of the podcast, what you think, how it has helped you. It helps out a lot. Yeah. Hopefully everybody's having a great rest of their summer. I love you all. Take care of each other and be kind.
Hello, comadre. Hey, comadre.
Adios, comadres. Bye.